What's up, everybody? On today's show, it was a busy recruiting weekend across the SEC. We're going to talk all about that with our buddy Brandon Olsen of Locked On Gators, as Billy Napier in Florida had an absolutely ridiculous weekend. We'll get to some other SEC notes. And also, it was a busy weekend in Omaha for the SEC. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, plenty to discuss. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Intercepted.
Takes the handoff.
Throws into the ball. What a catch.
Around the conference.
And we start with, man, it was a busy recruiting weekend for commits across the conference. And we got to start with the Florida Gators. Florida building out their 2024 recruiting class, landing a number of elite prospects over the weekend. First, we start with Amir Jackson, a four-star athlete out of the state of Georgia. He announced his commitment following his official visit to Gainesville. He's 6'4", 223 pounds, four-star prospect, the number 8th athlete overall, the number 108 player in the country. So he was, I believe, the 10th commitment at the time for the Gators. But Billy Napier kept working the phones. His staff kept going to work all weekend. They added to the class. Hours after, on Saturday afternoon, we already discussed they got Amir Jackson. Hours after that, they get a couple more blue-chip recruits. Amaris Williams, a four-star defensive lineman out of North Carolina. He's 6'3", 270 pounds. He's rated 4 stars. The number 4 recruit from the state of North Carolina. Number 23 defensive lineman, number 186 prospect overall. Then they got defensive lineman Nasir Johnson. He was the 3rd commitment of the day for Florida. He's from the state of Georgia. He's 6'4", 300 pounds. He's rated 4 stars. The number 30 defensive lineman in the 2024 class. The number 250 overall prospect. And then the Gators went 4 for 4 on Saturday. They picked up one more recruit, Aaron Chiles, 6'3", 220 pounds, 4-star prospect, the number 1 player from the state of Maryland, the number 6 linebacker, according to 24/7 composite rankings, number 80 prospect overall. Big time pickup for them. He had offers from over 30 schools. And with those, Florida now up to 13 commitments in the class. And there's still some talk that they're not even done yet. Just absolutely killing it. And Billy Napier, all the questions about him. Is he on the hot seat? He's got to win some more games this year. All that kind of stuff. But lo and behold, you look at what the Gators did on Saturday. That was just outstanding. 4 big-time pickups for their class of 2024. And now you look at the 24/7 composite rankings. They've got them into the top 10 all the way up, I believe, to number 8 as of this recording. So we'll get into a little bit more in depth with it with our buddy Brandon Olsen, host of Locked On Gators, coming up in the next segment. But continuing on, going on around the conference, we make a stop over at Ole Miss. Speaking of the Florida Gators, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss steal one away from the Gators. Austin Simmons, a 4-star quarterback out of Florida, flipped his commitment over the weekend from Florida to the Ole Miss Rebels. Simmons was originally a prospect in the class of 2025, but he made an announcement last week that he was going to reclassify to the class of 2023 and enroll this semester. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you get to skip a whole year in between. But after the announcement was made that he's flipped, Lane Kiffin posted a tweet of great weekend vibes in Oxford. It was accompanied by a screenshot of Tom Petty's top songs on Spotify. Of course, taking a dig at Florida. They play Won't Back Down at the end of every third quarter of every home game. Kiffin is celebrating the win. Florida beat Ole Miss in the most recent meeting on the field. But here, a four-star quarterback that was heading to Florida is now going to Oxford. It's a little strange because Lane Kiffin already has a loaded quarterback room there. Of course, Walker Howard, the big-time quarterback, transferred from LSU to Ole Miss this offseason. But we'll see what ends up happening with Austin Simmons, quarterback, going to Ole Miss now. Other recruiting news, Josh Heupel getting a big pickup over the weekend. Boo Carter, big-time recruit from Chattanooga, announced he is going to play his college ball for the Volunteers. He announced his commitment Saturday afternoon on social media. He's 5'10", 184 pounds, rated a 4-star, the number 2 player in the state of Tennessee, number 17 overall athlete, the number 207 prospect overall, according to the composite rankings at 24/7 Sports. Labeled an athlete, a two-way standout, but the secondary coach, Willie Martinez, defense coordinator Tim Banks, they have been leading his recruitment. So you put 2 and 2 together there, and you assume he is going to come in and be a DB for the Vols. But big thing was they stole him away from Michigan. I mean, it sounded like in recent weeks that this thing was trending very heavily towards Michigan, but the Vols keep him away, and they keep him in state. Carter also had Ohio State and Oregon in his top 5 teams back in December. So Boo Carter, staying in the state of Tennessee, going to play at Knoxville on Rocky Top, and a big pickup there for Josh Heupel for the class of 2024. Vols now have 12 commitments in their 2024 recruiting class. A few other notes. Over at South Carolina, they picked up another commitment over the weekend to go to 11 commitments. They picked up a linebacker out of the state of Virginia in Fred Johnson. Now, I believe his nickname is JR, but he is heading to Columbia to go play for South Carolina. He's from Norfolk, Virginia, 6'3", 225 pounds. He's rated a 3-star prospect, the number 10 prospect from the state of Virginia, the number 51 linebacker in the class of 2024. Shane Beamer got in the mix for him a couple of weeks ago, and he had offers from a couple of ACC schools, but they're able to steal him away, and he is headed to South Carolina. Auburn made another addition, kind of a quiet one, but they picked up a commitment from long snapper J.R. Buckner for the class of 2024. He is expected to begin his career as a walk-on. He attends Auburn High School right there in Auburn, Alabama, 6 foot tall, 245 pounds. Had a scholarship offer from Louisiana Monroe, but he told Rivals on Friday, I grew up wanting to be an Auburn Tiger, and getting an opportunity to do this just means the world to me. Even Auburn quarterback commit Walker White took to social media to welcome Buckner to Auburn. And now Auburn's got 8 scholarship players committed in the class of 2024, sitting number 29 nationally. So still some work there to do for Hugh Freeze and company. Meanwhile, over at Alabama, they already have their quarterback commit of the future in Julian Sayin. He was named the MVP of the Elite 11 finals over the weekend. It had more than a dozen of the nation's top quarterbacks in this cycle out there in Los Angeles. We're going to try to get a guest on this week who was there to talk about some of the quarterbacks that are committed to SEC schools, including Julian Sayin. But he's the first Alabama commit to win MVP of the Elite 11 finals since Tua Tagovailoa did it back in 2016. Everybody was raving about what Sayin looked like, said he was very impressive. And so, like we said, first one since Tua that's going to Bama, did it back in 2016. Blake Barnett also did it back in 2014, who ended up going to Bama. But previous winners of this include Justin Fields, C.J. Stroud. He beat out other highly touted quarterbacks, such as LSU commit Colin Hurley, Florida commit DJ Lagway. So, look, Julian Sayin showing out. And look, the headlines write themselves. Just saying, I've been saying, whatever you want to throw in there. But Sayin has been committed to Alabama since November of last year, one of the top prospects in the country for this upcoming cycle. The number 13 overall player, the number 2 quarterback in the country, currently goes to Carlsbad High School out there in California, 6'1", 195 pounds. And again, that's a kid that is going to, it's been on a lot of people's radar. And again, whatever's going on here with Alabama, whoever wins their job, whether it's Tyler Buckner or Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, whoever, this kid's going to come in and compete from day one when he gets there next year. So Julian Sand, congrats to him on the honor over the weekend at the Elite 11 camp. Few basketball notes here before we get our guest in here. Kentucky basketball, they picked up a commitment from a former UCF pledge and 3-star shooting guard Joey Hart over the weekend. He's the 7th commitment for the class of 2023 and product of Kentucky's lack of luck in the transfer portal. So they're just adding to the class. Comes from Indiana. He committed to UCF last year, but requested a release from his letter of intent. Took an official visit to Lexington and joins this incoming class that features 4 5-stars, a 4-star, and now 3 stars. Joey Hart is 6'5", 185 pounds, considered the number 268 overall player. And the Wildcats now have 9 underclassmen on their roster for next year, with only Antonio Reeves still in contention for return among key players from last season, but a lot of folks expecting him to move on. And one more note, Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson, they're in the mix to be the number 2 overall pick in the NBA draft. But the former Alabama shooter, Brandon Miller, he is, according to some mock drafts, expected to go number 2 overall to the Charlotte Hornets. And reports are that he is being brought in for a second visit and workout. So the reigning SEC player of the year, the Hornets are impressed with him. They're bringing him back in, and it will be a nice pairing there with LaMelo Ball over there in Charlotte. So we'll see if NBA draft later this week, if they end up taking Brandon Miller number 2 overall in this year's NBA draft. All right, thank you guys so much for making the Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the Gators' big recruiting weekend with our buddy Brandon Olsen, host of Locked On Gators. That's coming your way next. But first, I want to remind you guys this episode is presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look, baseball season is in full swing, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to join today. Don't miss your chance to snag that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go sign up. It is FanDuel. They are the official partner of Major League Baseball, and Major League Baseball trademarks are used with permission of MLB. So head to FanDuel right now and place your bets. FanDuel.com/lockedon is the place you want to go. Rolling along here, Locked On SEC. And yeah, we've been talking a lot about the weekend of recruiting across the SEC. And the one that grabbed all the headlines from Saturday, the Florida Gators, Billy Napier and company doing work. And so we thought, who better to get in here? And our buddy Brandon Olsen, host of Locked On Gators. And Brandon, what a weekend you guys are having over there in Gainesville, just absolutely crushing it. Welcome in.
Yeah, thank you. Glass case of emotion for the Florida Gators fan base this week, but things are on the up and up.
Let's talk about it, man, because it was just like this domino effect of all these kids announcing. Let's start with the 2D linemen, Amaris Williams and Nasir Johnson, 2 big 4 stars. I want to say Williams is around like 186 nationally and Nasir Johnson 250, but both top 30 defensive linemen. What do you make of Amaris Williams and Nasir Johnson? And man, those are some big fellas. 270 on Williams and 300 pounds for Nasir Johnson.
Yeah, it's crazy. Nasir Johnson is 300 pounds, but can do backflips. Like, the dude is insanely athletic. I know that Sean Spencer is just thrilled with the progress made on the defensive line, because this was a group where they did not have a commit going into the weekend along the actual defensive line. Defensive front, sure, you had maybe a Darius Hayes you could consider an edge guy, but there was kind of no momentum, but there was no results really along the defensive line. So to lock in Amaris Williams, to lock in Nasir Johnson was huge. And Nasir Johnson, we kind of had the feeling that he would eventually be a Florida Gator, but given how Florida's gone through the first 2 weekends of official visits without locking in anybody except for JUCO Quincy Ivory for the 2023 class, Things weren't looking great, but locking him in, Sean Spencer kind of helped steady the fan base. Despite, a strong 2023 defensive line class, you always need to bump that position year after year. So it was huge. Amaris Williams probably going to be more of that defensive end jack spot when it's all said and done. And then Nasir Johnson's probably going to be playing that 0-3 tech. This is a defensive scheme that they want you to be versatile. They want you to be able to play multiple spots. They've proven that consistently. Just look at the 2024 class. Every defender that they're even in the conversation for, it's like, well, is he a linebacker or is he an edge rusher? Is he an edge rusher or is he a defensive tackle? Is he a corner or is he a safety? They're looking for versatility. And great job, Sean Spencer, this weekend to lock in two guys that can play multiple spots.
Speaking of versatility, another one of the commits you guys got on Saturday, Amir Jackson, a 4-star athlete, number 8 athlete in the country, number 108 prospect nationally, according to 24/7 Sports. Amir Jackson, first off, how big of a get is he? And two, what position is he going to play?
He's going to be a tight end for the Florida Gators. That's where they view him. I know that there are many people who think he can legitimately play an edge rusher spot. It's possible, but Florida has been recruiting him as a tight end. That's where they want to play him. Russ Callaway, the tight ends coach, is his primary recruiter. That's been the goal. They want to kind of, we'll say, modernize a little bit by having tight ends that can split out wide and go into the flex. And Amir Jackson gives them that. Like, he's a basketball player too. He's going to be that red zone threat, that next, small forward, power forward that can move to actually play tight end and be there. And Amir Jackson was just a huge get, especially because it came down to Florida or USC for Walter Matthews just earlier this week. And Walter Matthews committed at like 5 a.m. to USC. And things weren't looking great at that point. But Florida locked in a priority tight end here. They're going to be looking for another one, maybe even another 2 that can really be those flex tight ends in line. You got some bodies there, some youth there. But Amir Jackson is going to be huge for this offense. Like, I haven't spoken to him. I haven't spoken to anybody about his visit. But based on how they recruited Jonathan Eccles and Walter Matthews and Caleb Odom, they probably showed Amir Jackson Kyle Pitts tape. And they were like, hey, this is how we want to use you. Because that's what they've done with tight ends that are these flex tight ends. And if I'm Amir Jackson, I see DJ Lagway in the fold. I see some of the other guys that are expected to fall, these dominoes that you mentioned, and Amir Jackson saw it, and he got in there early as the primary flex tight end for this class.
The 4th recruit you guys picked up on Saturday, last but not least, Aaron Chiles, 4-star linebacker out of the state of Maryland and number 1 recruit from the state of Maryland. And what's crazy about this is he's the number 80th prospect overall, but he's the 5th guy in the top 80 to commit to Florida. And 2 of those other guys in the top 53 are linebackers as well, in Adarius Hayes and Miles Graham. Is this like the linebacking core of the future? Do they just plug in Hayes, Graham, and Chiles and run with those guys as freshmen for the next 4 years?
That's kind of the plan. Jay Bateman historically has had, Jay Bateman, linebacker coach for the Florida Gators, has historically had one great year of recruiting linebackers, and then he kind of doesn't recruit them much the next year. So 2023 was a year where he doesn't recruit them much. They brought in Jaden Robinson, who's a safety linebacker hybrid, going to be learning how to play linebacker at the SEC level. And then this year, they brought in Aaron Chiles. They brought in Miles Graham. They brought in Adarius Hayes. They've been in on players like Chris Jones, who not sure if he's really got an offer that he can commit to at this point. Another DMV linebacker here. Jay Bateman's had a lot of success there, just given his previous stops. He's been great there. He's been cooking on the trail. And it wouldn't shock me if Florida brought in even another linebacker, because you have, like, Jamonte Waller is someone Florida really wants, and he is a very high-ranked linebacker right now. Jamonte Waller could play linebacker and edge. Adarius Hayes could play linebacker and edge. Like, this is something where Florida wants guys who can play off ball and on the edge, especially when you have Austin Armstrong as your defensive coordinator. Last year, he blitzed 40% of the time. That was the 8th highest percentage in all of college football. Linebackers accounted for, I think it was 28% from one linebacker and 19% from another linebacker from the starting 2. So this is a thing where Austin Armstrong needs you to be versatile. And that's why Florida's like, okay, then we're going to get guys who could play off-ball linebacker or edge rusher, and you're going to fit into whatever spot fits you best, and that's where we're going to place you. But for now, Florida's just stockpiling the talent. Jay Bateman had to deal with an entire offseason of fire him, replace him, get someone who could actually recruit, get someone who could develop. And then he answered that call with Miles Graham early, Darius Hayes a little bit after that. And now he just continues to build this momentum on the recruiting trail. And Jay Bateman, man, he's shutting up a lot of Florida Gators fans right now.
The crazy thing is, Brandon, 4 4-stars all in one day, and the Gators still sit at only 13 commits in this class. It's up to 8th nationally in 24/7 Sports composite rankings. I mean, look, if they can add another 5-star, 4-star, whatever, this class is going to keep climbing. It's crazy to think the work that they've already done, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about a kid that was supposed to be for the class of 2025 that was going to reclassify for 2023, and he went on to flip his commitment from Florida to Ole Miss on Saturday. What do we make of Austin Simmons? What exactly happened there with the future 4-star quarterback? And 2, how do you decide, oh, yeah, I know I was going to go to college in 2 years, but I'm actually going to go now? How does that even work?
Who? That's what I got on that one. Hey, if you're not a Gator, you're Gator bait. But Austin Simmons, look, best of luck to him. I am fully on board. Like, I'll talk my trash. I'm fully on board with whatever a kid wants to do. If they think that's best for them, great for you. But his dad kind of put the nail in the coffin for him, where he was like, that schedule's really tough. They like DJ Lagway. So what, dude? Like, you're coming to the SEC. This is competition throughout. You just added Texas and Oklahoma. Competition ain't getting easier around here. But sure, you do that. You do whatever you want. There were certainly some things that Florida maybe could have locked this in sooner. I know that initially the plan was Austin Simmons commits when he did, and he committed to the Florida Gators when he did that. And it was maybe 2025, maybe 2023. This is also an important thing where even now that he's at Ole Miss, this is not, a 15-year-old kid that is now reclassifying. This is a 17-year-old that has all of his credit. Like he is basically of age to go to college. So this is not like you're throwing in a child at actual quarterback for Ole Miss. Things happen where I know he took the visit to Ole Miss and it became an NIL thing. He took a visit to Florida and Florida thought they were in good standings. A couple of national and local reporters were like, hey, Austin Simmons is reclassifying now. That miffed the family a little bit, from my understanding. And at that point, I think that's where Ole Miss slid right back into it, especially that leak came right after the 2024 schedule came out. And it was like, okay, this is kind of a snowball effect of negative things here for Austin Simmons to leave and kind of give him that out. But he took that out, and that's great. Personally, I wasn't a big fan of him reclassifying the 2023 anyway. Nothing to do with him. It's just a lot to throw at a kid to go, hey, reclassify now and basically redshirt because you're not going to contribute. And then in 2024, it's you and Lagway, and we just see what happens there. I wasn't a big fan of Simmons maybe reclassifying to begin with, but best of luck to him. Lord knows what's going to happen with LeVar Ball over there as his dad. But that's best of luck to him. Congrats, Lane. You got that. You might want to actually win some meaningful games at some point in your career, but congratulations on getting Austin Simmons. Well,
and I mean, they got Spencer Sanders. If Jackson Dart wins this battle, he'll be there for the next couple of years. And Walker Howard just came over from LSU. So I don't know. It's kind of already looks like a crowded quarterback room to me, but we'll see what happens there. We should say Ole Miss did make another move on Sunday evening. They added Travaris Banks, a 4-star safety from Alabama, where Lane Kiffin took to Twitter and tweeted hashtag come to the SIP. And our own Brandon Olsen responded with nah. So had to throw that in there. Ole Miss making a move, but Brandon doesn't care. It was a great weekend on the recruiting trail for the Florida Gators, and I'm sure they got plenty more work to do. Brandon, thanks so much for the time, man. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you, Gordy.
All right, that's Brandon Olsen there of Locked On Gators. When we return, we will recap a little of the action of what happened over the weekend in Omaha. That's coming your way next. Rolling along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. I want to remind you guys, Locked On's NBA mock draft specials here, and it's bigger than ever. Follow along the entire first round in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience only Locked On can deliver. All episodes available now on Locked On NBA Big Board, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Appreciate Brandon Olsen coming on there with us and talking a little bit about the Florida recruiting weekend. Of course, there was a lot of recruits over the weekend. We'll continue to get you caught up to date with all that across the SEC. Before we get out of here, we got to recap all of the action. Big weekend out there in Omaha for the SEC. 3 SEC teams competing. Both Florida and LSU picked up wins on Friday and Saturday. We go back to Friday. It was the bottom of the ninth. Virginia was beating Florida 5-3, and the Gators had a magical comeback. Started with a solo home run by Ty Evans, made it a 1-run ball game. Wyatt Langford stepped in, took 2 pitches. He hit a no-doubter. And then following that, it was Jack Caglione singling. Josh Rivera walked. BT Riopel got hit by a pitch. And 3 pitches later, Luke Heyman hit a deep fly ball to center that was a walk-off for Florida. The 6-5 comeback win over Virginia. It was a 678th career win for Coach Kevin O'Sullivan. It was Florida's 21st comeback victory of the season. So congrats to Florida coming back on Virginia. Now, as of Sunday, Florida playing Oral Roberts. We're recording while this game's going on, so we can update you. Florida leading Oral Roberts 2-1. Ty Evans with a 2-run homer. So they're in the winner's bracket. Florida looking to move on with a win over Oral Roberts. We'll see if they're able to do that. But on Saturday for LSU, it was right-hander Paul Skeens going 7 2/3 innings with 12 strikeouts and a win over Tennessee. The Tigers moved into the winner's bracket. We'll face Wake Forest today. If you're listening to this on Monday, 6 p.m. Central. Tennessee starter Andrew Lindsay in that game. He was charged with the loss, went 3 2/3 innings, allowing 2 runs on 5 hits with a walk and 4 strikeouts. Tennessee did plate 3 runs in the 8th once they got Paul Skeens out of the game. An RBI single by Maui Ahuna. And then center fielder Hunter Ensley hit a 2-run homer off Gavin Guidry, LSU's reliever. Braden Joubert added the LSU lead in the bottom of the 8th to take it from 5-3 to 6-3. And LSU closed the doors after that. So Tennessee, they will take on Stanford this afternoon in an elimination game in Omaha. But look, Tennessee's kind of set up pretty well. They have all the rest of their pitchers available. And so I think Tennessee's pitching staff is deep enough to come out of the loser's bracket here. But a really tough challenge for them. Again, if you're listening to this on Monday prior to the game, Stanford's got a left-handed pitcher named Quinn Matthews. That's because it's going to present a lot of problems for Tennessee. Now, the Vols will counter with Chase Dolander, who's been red hot himself lately. So going to be interesting to see what happens there. And one more baseball note, LSU landing a commitment over the weekend from Xavier transfer Justin Lower. He's one of the top pitchers in the transfer portal, posted a 1.89 ERA, a lefty, earned all Big East honors, struck out 63 batters in 57 innings. So he will join an LSU pitching staff that's going to lose Paul Skeens and a few other big arms. So Justin Lower coming in there to join LSU. Kind of funny. LSU's season isn't even over yet, and they're already adding pieces through the transfer portal for next season. So congrats to Jay Johnson and company. We'll see if the LSU Tigers and the Florida Gators keep on rolling, and can the Tennessee Volunteers come out of the losers bracket. Plenty of action still going in Omaha this week. We'll keep you up to date on all that as the week rolls on. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And a shout out to our everydayers. Join us tomorrow on the show. We'll continue to get you caught up to date with all of the latest going on in the SEC football world. For Brandon Olsen, I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.